Edmund's first love got upset and took their token of love to an auction. He left me alone at our engagement party to rush to the auction and buy back the necklace at an exorbitant price. I announced the cancellation of our engagement and took off the ring he gave me. The day I left, Edmund's first love stopped me at the airport. I was only acting out of spite, I never intended to ruin your engagement. If you leave, Edmund will blame me, she said. Edmund pulled her back. Let her go. She's just imitating you by throwing a tantrum. She'll come back once no one else looks for her after a few days. I didn't go back. When Edmund was frantically searching for me in South City, I was already holding a new engagement ceremony with someone else. At the engagement party, Edmund suddenly left, and no one could stop him. I stood on the stage in a daze, the ring he had just slipped on my finger still there. Guests whispered among themselves, some mocking, some trying to help me save face. Soon, reporters captured Edmund at the auction, where he bought a sapphire necklace for twice the asking price. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. So he went to buy a gift for his fiancée. He should have said something, we thought he was ditching the engagement. When he comes back with the necklace, his fiancée will surely be overjoyed. Only I stood in the side hall, staring at the news coverage, unable to smile. The necklace was a token of love Edmund had given to his first love. I had seen it countless times before. The first time I moved into Edmund's house, the butler picked up the necklace outside the door. When Edmund saw it, he rushed out immediately. He didn't return until midnight, drenched and distraught, but the necklace was gone. Edmund explained, I just returned it to her. After all, it's hers. His first love was with him for only 3 months, before they broke up and she got married. I didn't feel much at the time. I thought since they had broken up and both had moved on, one married, one with a girlfriend, they should maintain a distance. But the necklace kept appearing more frequently. And every time it did, Edmund would lose control. When Edmund left the auction, his car sped off in a direction away from the engagement party. For some reason, the heartache I'd been holding on to suddenly felt lighter. Over the years, Edmund and I had argued countless times, because of that necklace. On the eve of the engagement party, in a moment of frustration, I threw the necklace off the balcony. It fell right into the lake outside. Edmund shoved me aside, rushed downstairs, and jumped into the lake. He retrieved the necklace and sat by the shore, drenched. Gingerly, he tucked the necklace into his pocket. He said, Wallace, this is the last time. The very last time. That day, he held me and cried for a long time. I thought he had finally resolved to let go of the necklace and its owner. I had loved him for 3 years. I believed I could slowly make him love me more with time. But the necklace kept appearing, like a knife hovering over my heart, finally striking down. Edmund had clearly forgotten his promise. The lively chatter at the engagement party died down as everyone realized he wasn't coming back. People looked at me with awkward pity. I smoothed the wrinkles on my gown, walked onto the stage, and announced the cancellation of the engagement. After all, my family and friends were present, and this absurd relationship deserved a dignified ending. When the party was over, the once beautifully decorated venue was left in disarray. I changed clothes, and as I was leaving, Edmund's mother stopped me. Wallace, Edmund is being immature. When he returns, I'll make sure he apologizes to you. I pulled my hand away and took off the engagement ring. Please return this to him for me. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. We had been together for 3 years. I thought time would eventually erase the memory of his 3-month relationship with his first love. But I was wrong. Every time that necklace reappeared, it seemed to remind him. Since I couldn't stop the necklace from appearing in his life, I could at least choose to leave him and never see it again. The day I left South City, it poured. The late autumn weather felt even colder. I packed 2 large suitcases with my belongings from Edmund's house. As I unloaded them from the car, rain splashed onto my coat. I checked in my luggage and headed for security. On the way, I saw a young man rushing over with a cake. He called out to the girl about to go through security. Urgently, and a little sadly, he opened the cake box. Take a bite before you leave. I spent hours making it. Who knows when I'll get to celebrate your birthday with you again? The girl took a bite while tears streamed down her face. I clutched my plane ticket tightly. So this is what it feels like when sincerity is met with true affection, it's enough to move you to tears. The first time I celebrated Edmund's birthday, I had made him a cake too. When I arrived at the private room, all his friends were there. I placed the cake on the table. But Edmund was in a foul mood that day. His phone kept buzzing. Someone teased him, "If you don't want to answer, block them or turn off your phone. Who's so clueless to bother you today?" Edmund remained silent, staring at his phone as it lit up repeatedly. The calls eventually stopped, replaced by a string of messages. It wasn't until his phone was about to die that he finally glanced at it. Stacy had prepared a birthday gift for him but was caught by her husband. They had a fight, and Stacy got slapped. Edmund flipped the table in front of him and stormed out of the room, leaving behind stunned guests and my cake, shattered on the floor. That was the day I learned how heartbreaking it is when your sincerity is ignored. The girl finished the cake, and the boy wiped her tears before sending her through security. I turned to enter the queue as well. Wallace. Was it because I'd been thinking about Edmund just now? Otherwise, why would I hallucinate and hear his voice? Smiling bitterly, I continued walking. The voice called out again, impatiently this time. Wallace. This time, I was certain. Someone was calling me. I turned and saw Edmund standing in the distance. He stood out, no matter how crowded it was, drawing all attention to himself. Standing beside him was Stacy, who nudged him lightly. Edmund frowned at her, but reluctantly walked toward me. It was the first time I'd seen him since he left the engagement party. Come back. Stop being so childish, he said, his tone impatient. To him, leaving me to face the humiliation alone, my canceling the engagement, returning the ring, and even leaving South City were all just tantrums. I already asked your mother to tell you, we're done, I said. Stacy, timidly standing beside him, spoke up. Miss Wallace, I'm sorry. I was just being spiteful, I never meant to ruin your engagement. Please go back with Edmund. Otherwise, he'll blame me. Edmund frowned. Who said I'd blame you? You're the one who insisted I come. I thought I'd be heartbroken seeing Edmund again. But in that moment, I just felt numb as I watched their interaction, the intimacy between them undeniable. I smiled in relief. The engagement is already ruined. From now on, when you two argue, I won't be part of your game anymore. With that, I turned and moved forward with the queue without looking back. Stacy called my name again, but Edmund grabbed her arm. Let her go. She's just throwing a tantrum, like you. She'll come back in a few days when no one's looking for her. When my flight landed in South City, I turned on my phone and saw a call from my aunt. Wallace, Leroy is already there to pick you up. Have you seen him? As I walked toward baggage claim, I replied. Got it. Send me his number. If I can't find him, I'll call. The last time I saw Leroy, he was still a boy in a school uniform. After so many years, I wondered if I'd even recognize him now. After hanging up the call, my aunt sent me a string of numbers. I hadn't saved them yet when an incoming call popped up. I glanced at the screen, it was the same number my aunt had just sent me. When I answered, a pleasant male voice came through. Wallace. My ears instantly tingled, sending a shiver down my spine. For the first time, I realized my name could sound this beautiful when someone else said it. I must have been silent for too long, because the voice on the other end called again. Wallace? I quickly responded. We agreed on a pickup location, and after hanging up, I noticed my heartbeat had quickened. Now I finally understood why the girls at work were so obsessed with voice actors. Having such a captivating voice speaking directly to you, it was that kind of feeling. Still, good voices usually didn't pair with good looks. Thinking back to how Leroy used to look, he wasn't bad. Could he have grown into someone unrecognizable? I sighed. Guys change as they grow up, too. I retrieved my luggage and headed to the agreed pickup spot, but I didn't see him anywhere. After scanning the area, I was about to call when I noticed a tall figure walking toward me with a bouquet. His tall and lean build, paired with striking features, turned heads even at the crowded airport. I wasn't an exception, I found myself glancing a second time. The man stopped right in front of me and handed me the flowers. It took me a few seconds to process what was happening. Leroy? You don't recognize me? We stared at each other, awkwardness and surprise plain on both our faces. Then we both broke into laughter. "I remember you only being this tall," I said, gesturing with my hand. Back then, he wasn't even taller than me. Who would have thought he'd grow like this? Leroy took the suitcase from my hand. "I saw others greeting people with flowers, so I figured I'd get some for you too. Welcome back." I clapped him on the shoulder, friendly but casual. "Thanks." But the gesture felt unnatural. It dawned on me that we weren't as close as we'd been as kids. Leroy seemed to pause too. The awkwardness lingered as we drove to my mom's old house. Finally, when we pulled up in front of the building, Leroy spoke. "Aunt had someone clean the house a few days ago. If you need anything or find it inconvenient here, you can stay at my place." The house my mom left behind was decades old. After my aunt remarried, no one had lived there. But I still wanted to stay. This was the place that felt warmest to me, whether it was when my mom was alive or later, living here with my aunt. I waved him off. "I'll stay here. No need to trouble you. Besides, even if I don't stay here, I can't just move into your house." Leroy glanced at me but didn't say anything. He carried my luggage upstairs. Watching him lift both heavy suitcases with ease, I finally understood why my aunt insisted he pick me up. There was no way I could have carried those up 5 flights of stairs alone. After seeing the outdated furnishings inside, Leroy reminded me as he left, I had the locks replaced. "If you need anything, just call me." I nodded and thanked him before closing the door. Even though the furniture was old, everything felt familiar and comforting. My aunt and I had agreed back then not to replace anything. At the time, we never thought we'd come back to live here. I went into the bedroom and saw the small bed. After my mom passed away, my aunt used to sit at the bedside every night to comfort me to sleep. I sat down, and the bed creaked alarmingly, scaring me into jumping up, afraid it might collapse. When I checked my phone, I saw a flood of messages from my aunt with tips and warnings. "Sleep in my room, don't break your bed. Keep clothes nearby when you shower, because the water might suddenly cut off. Avoid using the kitchen's electricity while washing vegetables, it's faulty. Lock the door at night." I fell silent for a moment, realizing how cautiously my aunt had been living after I left for college. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized I hadn't thought about Edmund all day. A change of scenery was definitely the right choice. I organized everything I brought with me. Even though I hadn't been back here for years and the streets looked vastly different from my memories, I quickly got used to the surroundings. By evening, Leroy's car appeared downstairs, right on time. I had promised my aunt that I'd have dinner at her place tonight. As the car drove through the Villa district, I looked out the window and turned to him. "Aunt really married into money, huh?" Leroy raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, she married into my family." I was even more surprised. "So, where are we heading now?" Leroy chuckled. "To one of my family's properties." Just as he finished speaking, my phone rang. It was Edmund. I didn't answer, I hung up directly. Edmund stared at the disconnected call, momentarily stunned. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Wallace was really getting bolder these days. He hadn't intended to make this call. The moment he returned to the family estate, his mother had dragged him out onto the balcony. "You've been so busy with work lately. Wallace is the one who always comes to visit us. She even taught me how to grow all these beautiful flowers. Look, without her, they're all wilting. You need to bring her back today." Edmund's mother only left after watching him dial Wallace's number. Who could have expected Wallace to have the nerve to hang up? Frustrated, he kicked over a pot of flowers blooming beautifully on the ground. If they were going to wilt, they might as well all wither together. When Wallace came back, she'd surely cry about it. These flowers couldn't do without Wallace, nor could his mother. Even he. That night, after he got drunk and his friends dropped him home, he demanded sobering soup. One of them had fumbled around in the kitchen and said, every time you drank too much, she'd make sobering soup and wait for you. I have no idea how to make this. Maybe just call her and get her back. He'd chased them out and slept on the couch that night. It was Wallace who couldn't do without him, not the other way around. He would never stoop to coaxing her. She'd realize soon enough that her antics were useless and come back on her own. Wallace wasn't like Stacy. She didn't need to be coaxed. Wallace liked him, she'd find a way to cheer herself up. When we arrived, my aunt was already standing at the door waiting for us. As soon as I opened the car door, she grabbed my hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "You've been through so much. From now on, stay with me, and I'll see who dares to bully you again." My own eyes welled up. The feeling of having family by my side was so reassuring. If I hadn't started dating Edmund during school, I might have returned to South City as soon as I graduated. "Stop standing around. Stay tonight and keep your aunt company. She's been talking about you every day," said a man standing behind my aunt. Looking a little embarrassed, my aunt introduced him. "This is your uncle-in-law. You've actually met before." I thought back and realized he was the guy who used to come by often to find Leroy. We'd bumped into each other in the hallway a few times. I greeted him with a smile, and we all went into the villa. It was a family dinner, and even the ones who weren't home often had returned. Being here for the first time, I felt a little awkward and instinctively tried to get up and help in the kitchen. My uncle-in-law gently pressed me back onto the couch. "Treat this like your own home. If you want to eat something, just tell your aunt, and she'll have the kitchen prepare it. No need to do it yourself." For a moment, I was dazed. Then I remembered this wasn't the family. When Edmund first brought me to one of his family gatherings, I had offered to help in the kitchen to ease my nervousness. After that, every time I attended one of their gatherings, I was always busy. Edmund was used to being taken care of, and eventually, looking after him became second nature to me. I smiled and nodded, only to have someone shove a pomegranate into my hands. "Here, eat this." I looked down to see a little girl who barely reached my knees. She had delicate features, like a doll, and her bright eyes sparkled. Though she was speaking to me, her gaze never left the pomegranate. I glanced around and spotted a fruit knife. Just as I was about to grab it, a slender hand reached out and took it first. This little trickster just wants someone to peel it for her. Leroy took the pomegranate and swiftly scored and tapped it a few times, revealing a bowl of glistening seeds. He handed a portion to the little girl, who skipped away happily. Then he pushed the rest of the bowl back into my hands. "Here's your pomegranate, all done." I looked at the perfectly peeled pomegranate and smiled. Stopping Leroy before he could leave, I held the bowl out to him. "Let's share." Leroy and I sat on the garden steps, sharing the pomegranate. He leaned back on his hands, tilting his head to gaze at the sky, his tone light-hearted and a bit childish. Food always tastes better when shared. I turned to look at his refined profile, and his face overlapped with the one from my memories. Back when we lived in the apartment complex, Leroy's mother was a great cook and always made delicious food for him. He would bring a bowl out and share it with me. Later, when his mother fell ill, and no one cooked for us anymore, my aunt started inviting Leroy to her house for meals. So many years had passed. Now, he was back with his father's family, living as a young master. I thought he wouldn't want to remember those less than dignified times. When I first started dating Edmund, I had just finished a long run at a sports event and was so tired I sat on the gym steps. Edmund frowned at me. "The ground is filthy. Can't you be a bit cleaner?" I flushed, feeling as though the ground beneath me was burning, and hurriedly got up. Only after following Edmund to a proper seat did I sit down again. Later, I learned from Edmund's friends that his first love had mild OCD. She always wore spotless white dresses that never seemed to get dirty, unlike me, who'd casually sit on the ground. Looking back, Edmund and I were never from the same world. His life had been smooth sailing, and his biggest setback was probably getting dumped by his first love. Meanwhile, I'd struggled my way up. My life's proudest moment was getting into a good university. Meeting Edmund and dating him felt like two entirely different worlds colliding. In the end, we proved we could intersect, but were never meant to walk the same path together. When the pomegranate was gone, a servant came to inform us it was time to eat. At the table, my aunt kept urging me to eat more. "Eat up. Now that you're back, I'll make sure to nurse you back to health. Otherwise, your mom will blame me." I touched my full stomach, feeling a little helpless. Back when I lived with my aunt, she always made my favorite dishes. After leaving for university, I wasn't used to the food there and lost a lot of weight. When I visited the family, Edmund's mother also prepared my favorite dishes. At the time, I thought their family was so warm, and his parents were so kind to me. but now, I realized she always said, "Eat more. You're so thin. When you marry Edmund and have kids, it'll be hard on you if you don't take care of yourself." At that time, being in the midst of it all, I only felt warmth and sweetness. During dinner, Leroy's second uncle's son casually mentioned Edmund, making my chopsticks pause midair. That young master from North City went to auction a necklace during his engagement party and ended up having his fiancée call off the engagement. He's practically the laughingstock of the whole city now. Sitting at the head of the table, Leroy's grandfather snorted coldly. "If you ever turn out to be as unreliable as him, don't bother coming home. I'll have your father throw you out." Leroy's second uncle's son chuckled and tried to flatter the old man. "Grandpa, I wouldn't dare." Under the table, my aunt gently held my hand. They still didn't know that the fiancé who broke off the engagement they were talking about was me. Fortunately, the topic quickly shifted, and no one brought it up again. After all, North City was quite far from here. People only talked about it for entertainment and didn't dig too deeply. After dinner, my aunt called me outside. "It's still early. Why don't you go out with Leroy to relax? Don't let what happened earlier bother you. This isn't North City, and no one here will bring him up again." Thinking of the dinner conversation, I knew my aunt was worried about me. But I wasn't that fragile. Just as I was about to refuse, I saw Leroy walking out from inside. He draped his jacket over my shoulders. "Put it on. It'll get cold on the mountain at night." To ease my aunt's worries, I went along with Leroy. The car climbed steadily up the mountain, and the temperature dropped the higher we went. Thankfully, I had Leroy's jacket. The wind whistled past, and Leroy's voice came faintly from beside me, carried by the breeze. "Wallace, did you forget something?" I turned to look at him, puzzled. The car came to a sudden halt by the roadside. He turned to me and said, "I brought you out here to relax. If we go straight to the top, we'll run out of time." His words pulled me back into the past. Back then, whenever I did poorly on an exam, Leroy would ride his bike as fast as he could when we were heading home. He'd tell me to shout my worries into the wind, and the wind would carry them away. Clinging tightly to the hem of his shirt as I sat on the back seat, I'd yell into the wind, "Next time, I'll be first in class." The car started moving again, and this time, I shouted into the wind, "I'll never like Edmund again." This time, I hoped the wind could completely blow Edmund out of my world. The car stopped at the mountaintop. The lights of the city below stretched endlessly, while above, the stars sparkled in the night sky. Leroy stood beside me, his voice deep. "When my mom passed away, you told me that she and your mom had become stars in the sky, watching over us. And we're like one of those countless lights in the city below. Even if one goes out tonight, it'll shine again tomorrow." Even the light in your home, which hadn't been on for so many years, eventually came back on. I waited for that day, too. So, there's nothing you can't get through. If you loved the wrong person, just love someone else. You're back now, and there will be many people who love you. Leroy's expression was serious, his eyes reflecting the shimmering lights of the city below as if they were filled with starlight. We stayed on the mountaintop, talking about our childhood memories. But he never mentioned how he returned to the family after I left. Leroy's mother had passed away just a few days before our university admission results were announced. That must have been the hardest time for him. Later, I went to North City for school, and we gradually lost contact. The last thing I heard was that Leroy had returned to the Cheen family. I thought we'd never cross paths again, but here we were, reminiscing together. It wasn't until the lights in the city below began to go out one by one that Leroy took me back down the mountain. At my aunt's insistence, I stayed here for a few days. It was clear that she was happy now. Her husband treated her well, and the elders liked her. When she was younger, my aunt had poor judgment in men. Her first marriage only lasted half a year. After that, she lived with us. After my mom passed, she took care of me on her own. She used to joke that we'd depend on each other for life. I knew back then, she was disillusioned with men and didn't want to start over. Her husband must have worked hard to win her over. I'm glad she met someone like him. When I returned from the Cheen family, I started job hunting. The interviews went smoothly, and I was set to start in a week. Life fell back into place, and I thought of my simple high school dream. To study hard, graduate, find a good job, and give my aunt a good life. Now, I realized I'd already fulfilled that wish. At my aunt's request, Leroy often came to visit. Sometimes, he'd take me to try new restaurants. Other times, we'd visit my aunt together. One day after work, it started raining. When I left, it was just a drizzle, but by the time I got downstairs, it was pouring. A coworker who was also stuck in the rain called out to me. "You won't get a ride in this weather. Call your boyfriend to pick you up." I smiled, about to explain they'd misunderstood, when I saw Leroy's car pull up and stop in front of me. My coworker nudged me, laughing, "Looks like you don't even need to call him. He's already here." Leroy got out, holding an umbrella. I saw it was raining and figured I'd swing by to pick you up. When I got home and turned on the lights, the apartment was dark. It seemed like a power outage. Just as I was about to leave and find a hotel, I opened the door to find Leroy standing there, hand raised as if about to knock. He glanced inside. "I saw the whole building was dark, so I thought you might have no power and came to check." In the end, we didn't go to a hotel. Leroy took me back to the Cheen family estate. As soon as the car stopped, the butler came out. Seeing Leroy, he smiled. "Third young master, you've been coming back to the estate more often these days. The old master was just talking this morning about wanting you to bring Miss Wallace over." My aunt wasn't at the estate today, making the house feel a bit empty. The old master waved me over when he saw me. "Come in quickly, or you'll catch a cold standing there." I glanced at Leroy, who had been completely ignored, and smiled as I walked over. It was clear my aunt had a good relationship with the Cheen family. Because they cared for her, they treated me well, too. The old master held my hand and asked the staff to prepare ginger tea. I reminded them, "Make 2 servings." Earlier, when Leroy came upstairs to find me, I saw part of his clothes were wet. He needed the tea more than I did. The old master glanced at Leroy and patted my hand. "You're so soft-hearted. No wonder he says you're good to him." I looked over at Leroy, surprised he'd said good things about me to the old master. After drinking the tea, we stayed for dinner. The rain outside grew heavier. The sound of the downpour hitting the windows was a bit unsettling. A message popped up on my phone from a friend. "Is that woman really going to divorce just to be with Edmund?" A video came along with the news. It detailed the origin of that necklace, which had already been dug up by netizens. The rumors about Edmund's lingering feelings for his first love were everywhere. Now, someone had caught him accompanying Stacy to a law firm to discuss her divorce. When a reporter brought up my cancelled engagement, his brows furrowed as he corrected them. "She's just acting on impulse. Once she calms down, a new engagement date will be announced to the media." When asked about his relationship with Stacy, he merely chuckled and said, "She's an old friend. Her marriage hit a rough patch, and I'm just lending a hand." Outside, the storm raged, but my heart was strangely calm. Giving up on someone probably feels like this, when their actions no longer stir a single ripple in your heart. Even if they announced their wedding tomorrow, I'd merely laugh it off. That night, Leroy knocked on my door several times. Soon, my desk was piled high with fruits, cakes, and late-night snacks. I ended up pulling him in to help me finish them. As we left together, the old man stood on the steps, watching us. He patted Leroy on the shoulder. "Win her over soon and bring her back to visit me." Leroy glanced at me and smiled. "Next time, for sure." Leroy dropped me off outside my company. I hesitated for a moment before calling out to him as I was about to leave. "Are you free tonight? Let's have dinner together." Leroy was visibly surprised for a moment before breaking into a smile. "For you? I'm always free." Embarrassed by his smile, I quickly walked away. Last night, when Leroy came to my room, he noticed my phone on the table, playing a video. He turned off the screen and asked me, "Wallace, this man isn't good enough for you. How about giving me a chance instead?" I didn't answer him at the time. But later, lying in bed, his words kept replaying in my mind. I asked myself again and finally realized I was willing to give him a chance. Stacy's divorce case went smoothly, thanks to the top lawyer Edmund found for her. To celebrate her newfound singlehood, Stacy threw a party, and Edmund was naturally invited. Midway through the party, one of Stacy's friends asked, "Now that both of you are single, when will you finally get together?" Stacy glanced shyly at Edmund, who was sitting in a corner. Don't joke around. Edmund still has a fiancée. She thought he would deny it, as he never seemed to care about his fiancée. But to her surprise, Edmund remained uncharacteristically silent. He simply held his phone, downing one drink after another. For a brief moment, the lively atmosphere seemed to pause. Stacy set her glass down and sat beside Edmund, speaking softly. Edmund, aren't you happy that I got divorced? Edmund, drunken and dazed, turned to look at the woman beside him. Happy? Should he be happy? When Stacy had left him to marry someone else, it had been a thorn in his heart. Now that the thorn was gone, he felt inexplicably hollow. Especially after seeing the photo his friend sent him earlier that day. In the picture, Wallace was sitting in a cake shop with another man. She was smiling sweetly while the man looked at her with unabashed affection. That smile of hers and the way the man looked at her, it all irritated him. She was his fiancée. What gave another man the right to look at her like that? His friend had asked, "Are you and Wallace really moving on to new relationships?" Only then did he realize he had never intended to move on. He had been foolishly waiting for Wallace to come back. But Wallace never did. And in the past few months, he had been so preoccupied helping Stacy with her divorce that he almost forgot Wallace had been gone for 3 months now. Edmund drained his glass and grabbed his coat, leaving behind a hasty, "I'm leaving." Ignoring Stacy's protests, he pushed open the door and left the room. His steps hurried and unsteady, as if he was running out of time to catch something slipping away. Leroy proposed to me not long ago, in front of his entire family. Of course, my aunt was there too. She was the first to cry, clutching Leroy's hand and urging him to take good care of me. Leroy's gaze was unwavering. "If I don't treat her well, let Grandpa kick me out of the house." He had been planning this engagement party in secret for over 2 weeks. Sitting in the car on the way to the venue, I glanced out the window. In a passing car, the half-lowered window revealed a side profile that looked familiar. I turned away and raised my own window. Edmund, sensing something, turned his head to look at the car beside him. But all he saw was dark-tinted glass. He pressed his temples, regretting not visiting Wallace's aunt in South City when he should have. Caught up in work, he had put it off and now didn't even know where she lived. Wandering aimlessly like a headless chicken. He called his assistant again. "Bring in more people to help with the search." Frustrated, he asked the driver to pull over, intending to step out for some fresh air. The moment he got out, he spotted a figure ahead that looked strikingly like Wallace. Without even shutting the car door, he rushed toward them. Only to stop short when the person turned around in confusion. It wasn't her. He felt a pang of regret. Why hadn't he tried harder to understand Wallace before? Now, it seemed she had completely disappeared from his world. Disheartened, he turned around and caught a glimpse of a woman in an elegant gown outside a hotel. From behind, she looked just like Wallace. He shook his head, laughing at himself for seeing her everywhere. But then his gaze fell on the screen above the hotel entrance, and he froze. It was Wallace. But why was it an engagement party? How could she be engaged to someone else? From across the street, he watched as she slipped her arm around the man who came to meet her. The man gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and she smiled at him with such tenderness. At that moment, Edmund felt as though they were in a world of their own. Separated from him by more than just a street. He watched as they walked into the hotel together, their figures disappearing inside. He dashed across the road in a frenzy, but stopped in front of the hotel. What could he say or do if he went in? He already knew Wallace wouldn't leave with him. The way that man looked at her, with focus and love, made it clear. The hotel staff smiled and asked, "Sir, do you have an invitation?" He instinctively stepped back, turned around, and walked away in a daze. After the engagement party, I received a gift box from the hotel concierge. "A gentleman without an invitation asked me to deliver this to you." Inside was a diamond ring and a letter. A glance at the signature confirmed my suspicion. The man I had seen on the way here was Edmund. Leroy wrapped an arm around my shoulder and scoffed at the letter's content. Why is he always interested in someone else's wife? I returned the letter to the box and handed it back to the concierge. "Send it to this address for me," I said, giving him Edmund's details. Turning back, I slipped my arm into Leroy's. I was now surrounded by people who loved me. Edmund belonged in the past. Edmund stayed in South City, expecting at least a call from Wallace after she received the box. Even a rejection would have been enough, just to hear her voice again. But after 3 days of waiting, there was no call. It wasn't until his butler informed him that a package had been delivered to his parents' house, signed under his name, that he realized Wallace had sent the gift back. Hearing the butler's description, Edmund lowered his head in defeat. Had Wallace grown to loathe him this much? He wouldn't even make a phone call to her himself. He bought a ticket and flew back to North City. Edmund's mother often called, asking when he planned to coax Wallace into coming back. He always replied, "She'll come back once she calms down." Another 2 months passed, and Edmund's mother finally sensed something was wrong. Under her relentless questioning, he could no longer deceive himself and had to admit the truth: Wallace was engaged to someone else. She left in disappointment. Sitting in his office, staring at the stack of documents on his desk, he suddenly didn't know what he was supposed to do. His secretary knocked cautiously and said, "Miss Lynn is here to see you again." Frustrated, he swept everything off his desk. "Tell her I'm not here." But before he could finish speaking, Stacy had already burst in. "Edmund, I got divorced for you. And now you won't marry me?" Frowning, he looked at Stacy and said, "I never said I would marry you. You also knew I was engaged. Your engagement is off. What fiancé do you even have anymore?" Stacy demanded hysterically. For the first time, he realized Stacy wasn't as poised as he had remembered. It felt like everyone around him wanted to remind him repeatedly. Wallace was no longer his fiancé. He had Stacy escorted out and told his secretary to never let her into the company again. He had never imagined Wallace would truly leave. The way she looked with that other man that day. It was then he understood. After Wallace left him, every other man out there would treat her better than he ever had. But he couldn't accept it. She had been so close to becoming his wife. And yet he had pushed her away with his own hands. And this time, she was gone for good. The end.